Alright, everybody, here we are on this cold, dreary, rainy February day. It is 2/22/22. Yes, I may have planned it this way, because why not? Let's get right into it. You guys know what you're here for, so let's go. Alright, first things first is this really obscure looking VHS tape I found, and I knew this was going to be something when I found it, and it is. I love this random stuff like this. Just this random garbage that only would have existed like in the 80s and 90s. I love it. And this one is How to Have a Money-Making Garage Sale starring Phyllis Diller. It's 25 minutes long. There's really nothing that you'll learn in this. It's either common sense or just Phyllis Diller going on some random tangent about something. But it's really entertaining and it's really cheesy. Phyllis Diller does not stop talking for the entire duration of this. And yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a relic. I mean, curiosity would have gotten the best of me had I not watched that. So I think it's actually on YouTube if you want to see it, but it's entertaining. I still don't know what the purpose of it was, but whatever. And then this is one I've been wanting to see for a while, An Innocent Man, starring Tom Selleck. I always like prison movies. This is a pretty good one, too. Tom Selleck. I love how one of your main villains is played by the guy that played Sledgehammer, that 80s cop show parody. So it's like you have Magnum P.I. versus Sledgehammer. Kind of a funny way of looking at it. You also have F. Murray Abraham, MC Gainey, all these other, genre people that you always see pop off. Little long, it's more prison drama than it is an action movie, but it stays very entertaining. Tom Selleck does great, and the fight scenes and the action scenes, when they happen, are done good. There's a movie I have in here I'll talk about in a little bit that's also a prison movie that has much more in the way of fighting. But if you're just looking for one that has a bit more of a gripping, dramatic storyline, great movie. Tom Selleck does good. No complaints. Like I said, it's a bit more on the law drama side than it is on an action movie side, but it's still a good movie. Paul Walker collection. I always try to have a Paul Walker movie in each update, and this time it was Timeline, which was actually given to me as a Christmas gift. I'm not the biggest fan of period pieces, especially a movie like this that goes way back in time. But the scenes that are outside of the past, which is not a lot, but there is some. It does keep cutting back and forth to the present, to the guys that are trying to bring them back. And I thought the storyline itself was conducted well enough to where I stayed entertained. Like movies like Troy and 300, and like those old, ancient, almost mythology I just have never gotten into. The only reason this one was on my list was for Paul Walker. I think it would have been funnier if they did it in the style of like a Bill and Ted style movie where it wasn't just one historical period, but I don't know, then it might be a rip-off. But for what it is, it's fine. I'm not the biggest fan of period pieces, so I wasn't necessarily the audience for this one. But as far as I could tell, I thought it was fine. And nothing too special. I'm not even sure how big of a hit that was. And then some 80s goodness. I just thought this one would be interesting. Just sounds intriguing, the premise. I've always been into space. Astronomy, space movies, just learning about stuff. It's always been interesting to me. So I got this 80s. I don't know, was this a Disney movie? I don't know if this was Disney or not, but it felt like it. SpaceCamp. Who I did not even realize watching this, that Joaquin Phoenix, the name Leaf Phoenix, is in here as like the little kid of the group, alongside Kelly Preston, a couple other people. It's a family movie, so don't expect And for what it is, again, I thought it was fine, especially when they get into space, which is definitely the highest selling point of this, is the space segment. The entire time I was watching this, I just couldn't shake the feeling of, imagine if this was like an R-rated Police Academy style comedy in space at space camp. Like, you know, first half at space camp, second half in space. If it was that kind of R-rated comedy a la Police Academy at NASA, I just couldn't stop thinking how much better that would probably be, and the types of jokes that you'd probably be able to get away with. But no, it's more of a family film. It's very safe, you know, and even there's some moderate suspense in there, even though nothing in this makes a lick of sense. The logic of using a live rocket and these kids accidentally getting sent into space, I'm not even complaining about that, because otherwise we wouldn't have a movie. I can suspend my disbelief for something like that. I just wish it wasn't such a safe, family-friendly kids movie. I think this premise would work a lot better as just like a crazier comedy or a more serious movie. Just a premise like that, just playing as a kids movie, just felt a little safe. I don't even know what the hell to say about this one. This is Girlfriend from Hell. It just sounded so corny and wild and goofy, and it is. There's nothing horror about this at all. This is 100% a comedy movie. I cannot say anything beyond that. The only actress in it that I recognized was the actress Leslie Dean, who was in Freddy's Dead, is in this as kind of the heroine. The jokes in this thing are just so corny. Like, they did not try. Like, they took the lowest bar for all of the jokes in this and just ran with it. So you have the shittiest jokes, but they're all done so earnestly, and it's so, like, consistently bad with the jokes that it works. It's not the most engaging movie. The vast majority, not all of it, but the vast majority of it takes place in this one house, and there's a few parts in the desert, and I almost wish it was even more zany and more madcap. Like, if they went all out, like Zucker Brothers type comedy with this, I think would have helped it, because as it stands, it's just kind of this meandering, weird comedy, and it's very hard to explain it. It has the weirdest, like, punk theme song, so bad movie buffs. If you want, I don't know if I could wholeheartedly recommend this. It's worth a look, but don't pay top dollar for it. I didn't think this was that good. I didn't think it was like a hidden gem or anything like that. Same thing with these. 2 years ago, right at the start of the pandemic, was when I started watching the Police Academy movies. And I had a 4-pack that had the first 4, and it took me long enough, but I finally got the set with 5, 6, and 7. I'm not even going to acknowledge Mission to Moscow. I did watch it, and it was I have not a single positive thing to say about it. So Mission to Moscow, no. Just no. I know these are where the movies start to get really hated. 5 I thought was okay. Kind of a similar thing I was saying with Girlfriend from Hell. It doesn't really try much with any of the jokes. The whole finale with him thinking it's a fake kidnapping and playing along, that was mildly humorous and mildly entertaining. I didn't mind that. I mean, it's not awful, it's watchable, but it's a very just... there's not a lot to it. However, I'll be honest, I did really enjoy Police Academy 6, City Under Siege. Garrett Graham is one of your trio of villains. The plot tries to be like a mystery, like who the crime boss is, even though I guessed it from a mile away. It was still at least something, you know, a little bit ambitious. And Michael Winslow has one of my favorite bits at the end. When he does the robot thing, I don't know why, that just cracked me up. So City Under Siege I actually thought was pretty good. I mean, and there's a monster truck, bus, crane truck chase at the end. I can't hate that. I can't hate that. But the real reason I have this set is for National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1, which is this batshit parody of like Lethal Weapon and all these 80s cop action movies. Primarily Lethal Weapon, but you get other stuff in there. I will go out on a limb and say Loaded Weapon 1 is probably the most star-studded film I have ever seen, because no matter how big or small the cameo is, every single person in this is like a celebrity. Even if they just show up as like a background character that has one sentence of dialogue. Like, the most star-studded movie. I loved a lot of the jokes, and some of them I thought were pretty ingenious. Like, there's a part where a title card shows up on the screen talking about the location, and Emilio Estevez runs into it and like trips over it. Like, I love that kind of stuff. To me, that was creative, and it did not at all deserve to flop or be the critical failure it was. There's an uncredited cameo in this. If you haven't seen it, I won't spoil who it is, but it's an actor playing one of their famous characters, and I had no idea that was coming. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my god! Like, so Loaded Weapon 1 was a blast. This whole thing is worth it for this. Police Academy 6, I would say, is solid, pretty good. This one is awesome. 5 is okay, and then Mission to Moscow. I can't believe I made it. And Christopher Lee is in it, and it doesn't even... It was a hard sit. It was a very hard sit. And another 4-pack I got this one for like $1 or $2. It was real cheap. I had never heard of... Well, I'd heard of one of these, but I'd never seen any of these. And reading about all of them, I'm like, those all sound absolutely insane. I need to see this. So it's a 4-pack of DriveThru Creep, Boy Eats Girl, and Tamara. Let me start with these two because I don't have as much to say. Boy Eats Girl was... it's like an Irish comedy. It didn't really do a lot for me. I don't really have too much to say about it. Tamara, from what I looked up, this movie has a huge cult following online. It's gotta be nostalgia driven, because I thought Tamara was lame as hell. It has one really grisly death scene, strangely early on in the movie, like with the tongue. That was well done, but the whole movie, like the color scheme, it looks just bland. The characters, you're not supposed to like any of them, but you don't give a shit about any of the characters. Even Tamara, she just starts off as a weird ass, and the ending was really dumb. I don't see why this has a cult following. I quite honestly thought Tamara was pretty bad. The real show are these two right here. Now, starting with Creep, which is the most serious movie out of this bunch, I liked it, and it was suspenseful. It really felt like a video game movie. Like, it felt like I should be playing like a video game, like a horror game, while this character of the Creep is following you through the subways. This movie was almost a really strong recommendation. It's hampered by the lead character being written completely awfully, just awful writing to the lead character, the woman. And the third act, like what... Because you get insight into the Creep, into his lair and what he's doing, and it is fucked up. Like, they don't go into it, but you get the idea that he's doing stuff like with abortions, and there's all these fetal jars, like... But the movie doesn't explain his backstory. His name is like Craig. I'm like, yeah, that's a terrifying name for your villain, Craig. And the lead girl, they do the thing where the lead girl sits there twiddling her thumbs and is responsible for a different, more likable character getting killed at the end, which I hated that. And the story and the script kind of falls apart in the final third. Which is a shame, because up until then, this was great. It was really tense. The scenery was great. Like I said, it felt like a video game movie. So I can recommend Creep. Just be just be prepared for the third act to kind of dip in quality and depth, because it's like the movie plateaus to such a high mark, and then they're like, oh shit, where do we go from here? And it kind of just ends on a lazy note. I put a stronger third act here and you have a really strong movie, but it's okay as it stands. The real star of the show is DriveThru. Right here. This made the whole set worth it. DriveThru is one of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen in my life, and I loved every second of it. It is, again, it's either the most genius satire of itself ever made, or they just made the worst slasher movie they ever could have made, where you have this clown named Horny the Clown, who, this fat Ronald McDonald-ish mascot for a fast food restaurant, where Morgan Spurlock of Super Size Me happens to work. And Morgan Spurlock, he only has one scene, but strangely, he gives the best performance of the movie. And like every kill scene, this death metal music starts playing and it turns into a music video practically. Andy from According to Jim is in it as a cop, basically playing the same character. The killer possesses magic 8 balls and Etch-a-Sketches. There's all this random Republican Party stuff thrown in. This was one of the most batshit, bonkers, out-of-control things I've ever watched. It was a train wreck, and I loved it. The backstory of the killer is 100% a ripoff of Freddy Krueger, and it made it hilarious. The most beautiful train wreck I have seen in a long time. I was in awe. I was laughing my ass off the entire time watching DriveThru. And I didn't even know this. There's an alias that my friends and I occasionally use called Jack Benjamin. And there's a character in this movie named Jack Benjamin. I nearly shit myself when that came up. It was awesome. So yeah, DriveThru, quality cinema. And then this one I had heard about. I'm a huge sucker for these like high concept, one location, like group of people type movies. Like Tower Block is the big one that I'm like, I love this movie. And then Cube, and to a lesser extent the Cube sequels, but I love that kind of stuff. I know there's another one called Circle that sounded interesting, but unfortunately the ending of that was spoiled to me in a completely unrelated video I was watching. But here we have one that just sounded intriguing called Exam. And I actually really like this one a lot. It's basically like the psychological thriller version of 12 Angry Men. I think your characters, without giving too much backstory or information about them, are a really solid group of people to spend your time with. Like, of course, they got one of every type. And their names in this movie, they're literally, the white guy is named White. The black guy is named Black. The blonde girl is named Blonde. Like, the deaf guy is named Deaf. So, it goes in that respect. But, for these movies, they always have a hard job keeping your interest the entire time. And this one did. I wanted to see what was going to happen and where this was going. This would be a good kind of movie to show in a mathematics class when you're learning about logic and deductive reasoning, because that's kind of what this is. It's like 12 Angry Men, where you're kind of going through the steps. This one has much more of a suspense angle thrown into it. The only thing that I'll complain about is the ending, because at the end, when it gets narrowed down to the final person, they reveal what this company is and what the job is that they're applying for. I think it would have been better if it was still shrouded in a bit of mystery. I didn't know if that was necessary at the end. But as it stands, great movie. I enjoyed it a lot. It really held my interest. And I have never heard anyone talk about this. So this one definitely gets a high recommendation from me. And then the Gary Busey collection, we've got Carny with him and Jodie Foster. If you want to see Gary Busey being Gary Busey and just going crazy, this is a movie that opens with very intense music and a scene shot like a horror movie where Gary Busey is putting clown makeup on his face, and several scenes of him going absolutely batshit insane crazy in a dunk tank. It's basically a slice of life drama about people that work in a traveling carnival and the stuff that just happens on the road along the way and the mental hardships they go through. And then in like the last 20 minutes, it turns into Todd Browning's Freaks. So there's that. Interesting movie, though. It's definitely trippy. It came out in 1980, but there's definitely a whole abundance of the 70s, submerged onto it. Interesting stuff, though. And Gary Busey, hey, you want to see Busey being Busey? Great cast, too. Supporting cast. You've got Meg Foster. You've got Tim Thomerson. I mentioned Jodie Foster. Robbie Robertson from the band, for some reason, as your other supporting lead besides Busey. So you have a lot of recognizable faces in this, too. So weird little unknown movie, but it's definitely worth a look. Same with this, like, Roger Moore gets so much shit as James Bond. Unearned, because I personally love Roger Moore as Bond. Yes, it's campier and it's more lighthearted, but who cares? Like, they're entertaining movies, and Roger Moore has so much charisma to him that I thought he was perfect as James Bond. My number one favorite James Bond movie is For Your Eyes Only, and that's one of his, and I love a bunch of his other ones. So I wanted to see, this is his first post-Bond movie he did in the mid-70s after Live and Let Die, called Gold, which half the crew, like John Glenn, Peter Hunt, the cinematographer, the musical composer, the person who designed the titles, this is basically the crew of a James Bond movie making a non-James Bond movie that feels like it should be a James Bond movie. This movie is at its strongest in the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes. Roger Moore does great. It's based off a book, from what I understand. The main issue is the entire hour in the middle. It becomes like this meandering love story with Roger Moore and this woman that's the wife of one of these main villains that's trying to flood this gold mine so they could kill every... typical kind of 70s disaster movie plot. The first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes, which are the scenes that mostly take place in the mine, are the best of the movie. Any of the scenes in the mines are really good. And there's a couple scenes here and there, like you see some people getting offed by the bad guys that were pretty unexpected moments and cool, but if you would have tightened up and added one more action set piece in the middle, instead of turning it into like this weird love story, I think this would have been a much more fondly remembered movie. And the fact that it's based off a novel and the author of the novel co-wrote the screenplay, that was the biggest mistake right there, because he probably wanted to keep it like that. So the first 30 minutes are good, last 30 minutes are good. You have to put up with kind of a meandering love subplot in the middle, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty solid movie, and I do like the finale, so it's good, and it's very impressively shot at the ending too. With Roger Moore and this other guy, as it's flooding and they're in the mine on a raft. It's interesting. If you're a Bond fan, Roger Moore fan, it's worth a watch. Just don't expect the quality of like For Your Eyes Only, The Spy Who Loved Me, Live and Let Die. And the other prison movie I got that I alluded to earlier was In Hell by Van Damme, also starring Lawrence Taylor of the NFL, and Michael Bailey Smith is in this. Always good seeing him. Prison movie, like I said, is direct-to-video, but it's actually pretty solid, and I would argue this might be some of the most dramatic acting I have seen from Van Damme. Like, he really gets going in this prison drama where after a while he starts to get corrupted and in with the system, getting into these fights that are the warden and all these people are betting on, and people are getting killed and disposed of. Pretty solid. I actually really enjoyed this one. There's no shortage of action, fights. Van Damme spends 70% of this movie getting the shit kicked out of him, and so you really feel for him by the end. It comes to a satisfying conclusion, and it's a much darker, dreary movie, but I like it. there's a lot more implied male-on-male rape than I thought there would be going into it, but solid prison. Like I said, I don't know what it is. I've never been to prison, hope to never be to prison, but I've always had a soft spot for prison movies. I mean, Lock Up with Stallone is one of my favorites, Death Warrant with Van Damme. And then this is a pretty infamous one I had heard about for a long time, so I just wanted to see it. The Late Shift, which is the movie about the Jay Leno-David Letterman feud when Johnny Carson retired from The Tonight Show. John Michael Higgins does really good as David Letterman. The guy playing Jay Leno is almost like a stereotype spoof of Jay Leno with this comically large chin and this accent he's doing that's really over-the-top Jay Leno. Kathy Bates steals this movie. And this is based on a true story, by the way. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the subject, but from what I understand, the majority of this is real. And Kathy Bates steals the show as this monstrous, just overpowering, demanding, agent for Jay Leno. And you get some other people in there, Ed Begley Jr., Treat Williams, a lot of familiar faces. And this is so drenched in the 90s and the 90s TV culture, back when late night mattered. As the only modern contemporary late night host I like is Conan. He's the only one in the last, recent times that, in my opinion, gave a good late show. Not like these other over-politicized Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, or then the overly goofy Jimmy Fallon or Seth Meyers, who, I don't know if that guy ever had a personality. But this is a cool time capsule movie of this time in television history, and I really did like that one. This one I just got for the cheese of it, Clockstoppers. I was hoping for the most 2002 movie ever made, and that's exactly what I got, with very corny performances by French Stewart and Michael Biehn. It's not a good movie, but it was enjoyable and fun to watch. I saw this cover, I'm like, please, be the most 2002 thing I've ever seen. And I had never seen this before, but strangely enough, I still felt super nostalgic watching it, because obviously early 2000s is when I was growing up. I'm a 90s kid, so early 2000s when I was growing up, so this style of movie it brought me back. It does for 2002 what Airborne did for 1993, a movie I talked about like a year ago. This was an obscure one I just watched on a whim. This is a movie that got hated, it flopped, almost nobody knows about it. I actually thought it was pretty good. It's called Best Men. This cover is the most misleading thing ever. This is not like a lighthearted wedding comedy or anything. This is more of a thriller dramedy about the group of these friends. It's Luke Wilson's birthday, and you have Dean Cain, Sean Patrick Flannery, Andy Dick, and a couple others. Fred Ward is in this as the town sheriff. They hold up this bank on the way to Luke Wilson's wedding, and Luke Wilson has just gotten out of prison. And you have Brad Dourif in here as like this Vietnam war-shocked veteran, and he is awesome in this. Like, he's one of the best parts, always giving these motivational speeches. And in the third act, this thing goes to really dramatic, poignant places that I never saw coming. Like, this cover lies, because by the end, this thing it's something. I can understand why many people don't like this one, but I dug this. I thought this was great. It was suspenseful. I wanted to see where this went, and the places where it did go, I never would have seen coming a million miles. And the dramatic ending, I know a lot of people probably hate it, but I thought it worked perfectly with the whole moral of this. I thought this was a gem, and the fact I had never heard of it, I enjoyed this one a lot. It's dramatic, but the comedy parts are still fun, and I like that one. And this is one I grew up watching with my dad a lot, Silver Streak, so I've got fond memories of it. The first hour before Richard Pryor comes in isn't anything too special. Of course, you have Jaws, Richard Keel's in there, and a couple other people giving good performances, but the movie comes to life with Richard Pryor, including a scene in the train station terminal with him and Gene Wilder that would never get made today. That scene of this would probably get crucified, but you know, I have a soft spot for it. I grew up watching this with my dad a lot. The first hour is pretty slow. This easily could have been trimmed down quite a bit. But, you know, it's as soon as Richard Pryor comes in, it's entertaining. And the climactic ending, I don't care who you are, that is still one of the most impressive stunts and model shots or action, whatever the ending, however they did it, is impressive to me. Fans of classic, you know, 70s cinema and stuff like that, mystery, there's not really a murder mystery, but it kind of is, just because you don't really know what's going on. It's not as comedic as it could be, especially before Pryor comes in, so I think they could have touched up and made it a bit more comedic, but like I said, I got a soft spot for this one. I grew up with my dad watching that a lot on TV. And like I said, I've been in the kick collecting It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. These are seasons 3, 4, and 5. And the seasons of this show are not that long, so I was able to get through pretty much each of these seasons like in a day or two each. Like, they're easy to go through. Season 3, I think season 3 is the one that had the Die Hard parody on it that I really liked. Let's see, season 4 I think has an episode that was banned where they're trying to do this advertising marketing thing. It's got the two-parter, Mac and Charlie Die, which is fun. And Mac's dad is played by Gregory Scott Cummins, so it's always fun seeing him in things. You know, this show's not for everyone. The characters are all completely unlikable on purpose because of the situations they get into. It's a fun show. I'm glad I jumped on the bandwagon of it, so there you go. There's season 3. Season 4, and Season 5. I'll definitely be talking about more of these in the future, so you'll probably see a few seasons in each update. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. 2222222, and lots coming up, so stay tuned on the channel. We got some good content coming up for you soon. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.